Welcome to the podcast Living by Oak Values. My name is Robert, and I host this podcast with my friend Gary. Join us as we dive deep and share meaningful stories and discuss values that helped shape our lives. We explore how to use these values that guided us through our life, shaping our decisions and relationships while raising our kids. We are embracing a journey of personal growth and navigating our own path. We are committed to living by these values and passing them on to our children. We are thrilled to have you today and can't wait to share our latest episode. Whether you're a longtime listener or just now discovering us, welcome. And check us out at northmancoaching.com. You're welcome to join our community, Northman Legacy Crew, and let us know what topics you're most interested in hearing about. Sign up with your email for behind-the-scenes sneak peeks and exciting updates. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and happy listening.
This episode is sponsored by Northman Coaching and the signature Oak Value cards. Our guest today is Miss Jenn Gray. Good morning, Jen. How are you?
I'm so good. How are you guys?
Good.
I am
good.
well.
Good.
So, tell us a little about you.
All right. So I am a mom of 4 amazing kiddos. I'm down here in Atlanta, Georgia. I am a podcaster as well. So I love it. I'm super excited to be a part of your podcast. I love what you guys are doing and what you're championing. So my podcast is called Be Genuine with Jenn. And I believe our authenticity is our superpower. So I love getting to share the stories of people just betting on themselves and really ripping off the mask and, identifying who they truly are. So that's my passion project. By trade, I'm actually an insurance agent. I know, right? Don't judge me. I do health and life insurance. I love it. It's just a really practical way to provide value to families. My passion is helping entrepreneurs and small business owners really find a new option. So whether it's being on baseball field, gymnastics practice, or orchestra concert, I'm a mom full time and handle all the other gigs that I do in between. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. So, what value are you going to be speaking of today?
I am going to talk about peace.
Okay. So, from the Oak Value deck, peace, our definition for peace is freedom from loud or oppressive thoughts or emotions. What does peace mean to you?
Oh, I love this. So a little backstory, a little over a year ago, actually March of 2023, I went through a huge upheaval of life where I had a time that I literally looked at myself in the mirror and I said, I do not know the 2 eyes that are looking back at me. I don't know how I got to here. I feel so disconnected from who I really am. I feel so with complete lack of peace. Like everything just felt like my stomach was in knots, my life was in knots, like all of the things. And so I literally went on a journey of peace where I'm like, if it does not align, if it does not feel like it's who I truly am, like I don't want any part of it. And so that took a lot of humility. But the focus and the core value, in a sense that I just held so tight to, was I just want peace. So that was with my ex-husband through a healthy co-parenting relationship and just literally coming to him and saying, clearly we don't work, but we have to work together. What's best? There's only 2 people on the planet that love the kids the way we do. And so put everything else aside. If you're willing to, I just want to work together. I want the maximum amount of time with the kids. I know that you do as well. And I feel like we can be adult enough to do that. And coming from 5 years of a very tumultuous co-parenting relationship, it was like email only, no communication, and there was no working together. That was one area that I'm like, I know there's space for peace. And then it went with other relationships. So the past few years, I had lost relationship with not only my mom, but my sisters and so many people in my former community. I'd gone through a divorce in 2019 and I worked at a church at the time. So through that, I lost a lot of people. And I very quickly, what I would consider myself being an asset, I became a liability to a lot of people just based on their cultural views about just divorce in general. And so through that, I ended a lot of relationships. And so even with that, so now part of my journey was it brought me back to my hometown, and I was faced with the reality. I I can have humility and desire peace. And here's something I want to point out as I say this. Peace does not mean becoming a doormat. Peace doesn't mean that all of a sudden you're a people pleaser. And that was something that I was my whole life, right? And that doesn't bring peace as well. Peace is when you are authentically 100% who you are, but you also have empathy on the other person on the other side of a relationship. And so for me, it was from the co-parenting to my mom to even some of the leadership of the church that where I don't condone necessarily how I was treated. I also could have empathy 5 years after to you didn't know what to do. I was at very high level leadership and what my choices didn't align with your values. And so I was basically kicked to the curb. Now I think you could have done 100 different ways, but it is what it is. And I can have empathy on that. And I just want peace. That doesn't mean I'm going back to that church. No, I actually go to a different church, right? So peace doesn't mean you're a doormat and you just put yourself back in those scenarios, but it also means that you can find bridges to cross with somebody else. And that's where it was in my life. Like, how can I build a bridge with these relationships, with what we both value? So with my sisters, like I want to be an aunt, right? I have two amazing nephews with one sister, and then I have two amazing nieces and another nephew and another baby on the way with my other sister. And so these are all relationships that were so and so important to me, but I had let my own pain keep me from living a life of peace. And so this past year, it's been aligning with the right things, and it's been listening, and it's been having hard conversations and letting them know at the end of this, I just want us to find a pathway to move forward. Whatever that looks like, may not look like what you did before, but the piece is where I can go to bed at night and be like, there is no one that I'm angry with. It doesn't mean I'm best friends with everybody, right? Not everybody's my cup of tea or me theirs, but it's seeking that alignment and that peace. So whether it is from, from personal development, and seeking peace there is where there's growth, right? It's peace with myself that I am growing into the best version of myself. And it's, financially, it's having a mindset of just financial peace in your life and, spiritual peace and, even physical. Like I want to achieve things, physically. So it's being at peace with that, knowing I'm headed in a direction that most aligns with who I am. And so that's why peace has literally been such a benchmark, especially in this last year of my life in a completely new way than I ever thought peace meant previously in my life.
So what was it that made you realize that you needed this peace? That the church kicked you out. You could have been bitter and just hated them, and even the ex-husband. Mm-hmm. You didn't have to co-parent. Well, what was it? What was the shift in your mind that made you decide that you needed to have peace?
Yeah, great question. I went through 4 years of being bitter, of being hurt and living in that space and blaming it on everybody else, right? Like it was easy for me to blame everything on my ex-husband, easy for me to blame everything on the church or blame everything on everyone else. And what I learned is the only way I grow and I genuinely have peace is when I take ownership. And when I find what I can learn from this and how I could have handled things different. And so I think humility and peace for me went very, very much hand in hand. And so when I could step outside of it and I could realize that there's things that I needed to change as well, then it allowed me to be able to move forward in seeking the peace in those relationships. And honestly, Gary, it was that whole like looking yourself in the mirror situation. I was so balled up with anxiety. And even though, I'm like my whole life, it was just like easy in some sense. Right. Some of it was like, I had to hide, what I didn't want other people to see because, all this, that's another conversation. But in this time, I'm like, what am I holding on to? Like, am I just like holding on to the pride that I'm right and you're wrong? And eventually you watch how people say like pride is like you having poison and trying to hurt someone else, but you're just hurting yourself. And so that whole lack of peace was literally me just living like this hard-hearted life of like, I'm going to be hard-hearted so that you can't hurt me again. And then instead of just, I'm going to heal so that I can love me first, and I can be at peace with the people then in my life, and I can have these conversations, and I can listen without fear that means that I'm condoning something. And instead, I'm not condoning, I'm listening it, and I'm honoring your truth. And yet I'm still holding tight to mine, and I don't have to lose my truth to hear yours. And so that a lot of that was a personal, just self-growth, and just knowing that the only way to not live like this ball of anxiety was to just let go, and to at first have, and then another thing I didn't even really talk about is having peace with myself. I think some of it, whenever you go through hard things, and you maybe, I don't know if anybody's ever made a decision they weren't proud of, or maybe I'm just the only one. So I had done, I had essentially gotten myself into a life that I wasn't proud of. I wasn't, because again, it wasn't genuinely who I was. I felt like somebody like taken my life and turned it into this big, huge like circus. And the person who did that was me. And so instead of blaming on other people, I had to have peace with myself, that hurt people. And sometimes the hurt people are our own selves. And in our hurt, we can hurt ourselves even further. And that's exactly what I did. It was almost like this self-sabotage, until then I had this like wake up call of, I have to have peace with myself, and I have to love myself enough to want to heal and move forward and honor who I really am, instead of giving all that power over everybody else in my life.
That's incredible. I just had a talk with my daughter last night about love and loving yourself. And you can't truly love another person until you can love yourself. And you can't love yourself until you find that peace and forgiveness. That's incredible. And I love that you said ownership. One thing that is in common with everybody we've had on the podcast and everybody that we've coached is that when you get into this work, once you take ownership and stop blaming, everything changes so quickly for the better, usually.
And that was the biggest key. That's, if you look at my life, it wasn't like I didn't have an explosion or an implosion of life in 2019 when I went through my divorce, and that's where I lost my community and lost all of that. You think that would have taught something, but that's the biggest key. That's the only difference in the implosion of my life in March 2023 versus the implosion in 2019, was I took zero ownership in 2019. And this time I could have blamed everybody else just the same. I had a million reasons to blame everybody else, but I knew that wasn't going to get me anywhere, because I saw where that got me. Where that got me was back into the same patterns, with the same life, with the same mistakes, because I didn't heal and didn't grow from, I didn't take ownership that I was just as responsible as anybody from getting myself into my hardest days. And what's the beautiful part of it is, I saw this quote. It says it takes 24 hours to be born, but it also takes 24 hours to change. And so to know that doesn't mean you have to go through this huge, long, sometimes therapy. I'm not saying don't do therapy. Therapy is awesome, right? Get you a coach, get you some help, but also know that when you have that wake up call moment, it doesn't take forever to change. You can change in that instant and say, this is the first day of a brand new life, and I will take ownership, and I will seek to have a life that is truly healed. And just decide and just say, today is the day that enough is enough. And I am tired of looking at myself in the mirror and not loving who I see. And instead of blaming on everybody else, I'm going to have peace with me, and I'm going to make a change. And taking it one step at a time too. Like, it doesn't happen overnight, but one step at a time. Y'all, I am a completely different person 1 year ago than I was then. If you had told me what I would even, be like, I mean, I'm still Jenn, right? But so many things. And it wasn't overnight. It's just that I look back on pictures of a year ago and I'm like, okay, there's so much growth, because every day it's one step at a time, 1 foot in the right direction. And then the next thing you know, you are on a trajectory of a life that you love to live. There's hard times, right? But you have peace that I know I'm headed in the right direction and I'm aligned with the right people. And that's massive.
That is a beautiful story. I love that one. So I guess, like, when you went through your last breakup, the Texas one, if you had not done this work and jumped into another relationship, it would probably end or be as toxic as the last one, or end the same way.
1,000%, which is why not only do you take ownership, but you also have to take time to heal. And so that's what it was for me. So I marked out a full calendar year. I said, from March to March, I'm not going to entertain anything, because what I don't want to do, because I took ownership, is I don't want to bring that into the next relationship. If I want something that is different, then I've got to change the person that I'm bringing to the table. And I have to bring my best to the table instead of looking for someone who's going to make life different, right? Knowing that you and yourself and yourself and I, whatever, are the people who are going to ultimately change your life. And then when you add all of your energy into stripping away what doesn't belong and healing the parts of you that of just life and what you've gone through, then it just puts you in a completely different space. And so that's where the ownership took action, where I'm like, okay, now I'm taking ownership, and now the ownership is the next level. Now I have to take the time to heal so that I can genuinely show up as the best version of, and it's not perfection, right? I will never be perfect, but there's also a lot of healing that can take place that needs to, before, like you said, you bleed on a relationship that didn't cause it. And that's ultimately what I didn't want to do.
Awesome. You say you can't be perfect, but you can be perfect enough.
Yeah.
So, no one's perfect.
Exactly.
But yeah. If you are aware of that, and you're aware of who you are, and you can accept who you are, then you're perfect enough.
Yeah.
For you.
And that's
and that's all that matters.
Exactly. It's when you look at yourself in the mirror and you just, again, and that's where I love the word alignment. And again, it's peace. It's that when I look at like every area of my life, and maybe someone else listening to this has experienced where your life has literally been obliterated to smithereens. And I will tell you, a year after, wherever you are on your journey, a year after, there has been nothing more cleansing and peaceful than getting to build from the absolute bottom back up, but only with the bricks that align with who I want to be and who the future that I want to build. None of my past gets to go. We're not building with that anymore, right? We that took me down. We're not putting that in here, right? So we have to heal and to get rid of that and have peace with that, so that your mind and your heart and your actions can move forward. And even that, like for instance, so I mentioned I'm an insurance agent. So I had gotten rid of my relationship. I had fixed, my co-parenting relationship. And I was, working. I started a podcast and everything was moving. And the insurance agency, they ended up making just a very, very top level decision that I just didn't align with. Like it was to me, it was like a control freak kind of decision. And it's one of those things that I hadn't even really looked at that as even an area that maybe I needed to change until that happened. And even that, ultimately, I got rid of that. And so even that was in like October. So after I thought everything was like rebuilding, I was like, oh, just kidding. We got to get rid of that too. And rebuilding that in a way that honors who I am, with integrity and character, and aligning with actual leaders who are genuine. And so that was like another huge step backwards. And that was, 6 months after I thought my life had, started over. But again, that's when you have a heart and you desire peace, then you're in tune with the fact when something does not bring you peace. And so when you look for that, and when you have that as a standard in your life, then trust me, if I get in a relationship, I guarantee you I will not ignore the red flags I've ignored previously, because red flags do not bring peace. And I am like so much like, I will protect my peace at all costs, because the closure for myself did not happen with another person. It happened with me, myself, and I. When I decided last March, my closure is I will never experience a life without peace that I lived. Right. And so the closure is that I will never live like that again. So maybe for anyone listening, that's the thing. Your closure for you may be, you know what? Yeah, I've made some poor choices, or I've gotten myself into some messes, but I'm deciding now to move forward with the life of peace. And the closure is that you will never live with that insanity that you've been put through before. And that is something that you are capable of. And so that's where I've been, is I want to be so strong that I love my peace so much that I'm not going to let anything or anyone steal that from not only me, but also for my children.
So me and Gary had did a bunch of look up different quotes, and as you speak, and really appreciative you sharing your story with me, because that was something I had dealt with a while. But the one that comes to mind is by Ronald Reagan, where he says, peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the ability to handle conflict by peaceful means. And it sounds that's exactly what you try to do in a lot of your lifestyle.
Yep. It's so good.
Are you looking for a little boost in motivation and self-improvement? Check out our Oak Value Cards. Empower yourself with our thoughtful collection of motivational and insightful core value cards. Boost confidence, find peace, and nurture self-love. These cards are perfect for personal growth or even as a thoughtful gift. Remember, every small step you take towards personal growth is a step towards a happier and more fulfilling life. Start your journey now with our Oak Value Cards. Enter promo code PEACE for 20% off your purchase.
You have 4 kids. How do you teach them to live a peaceful life?
Ooh, great question. A lot of that is, hey, kids, learn from my mistake. But no, I think the first way that you learn to prioritize is what I was looking for. Prioritize peace is to show your kids like what peaceful looks like. So for instance, and it's, it's more than even just relationships. So keeping a room clean. Okay. So that's something, right? If you got divorced kids, things just happen differently, different households. Right. And so like for my son, I know that he values a clean room. And so instead of just being like, go clean your room, I made it an emotional connection. I said, how do you feel in a clean room? And he used the word at peace. I just feel at peace. And so even with that, I'm like, exactly. I'm like, that's why it's more than just like harping on that. Like you have every morning by doing something so simple, you can bring peace to the room that you want to live in that day. Right. And so even that so we talk about that even like with homework. Okay. If we have everything is scattered and it's all over the place and it makes us feel like anxious and we're, all out of sorts. And if we procrastinate, then we get stressed out. And so we talk about, okay, let's just prioritize our week. Let's talk through it. This is due on Thursday and we have church on Wednesday, or we have baseball on Tuesday, then let's figure out when we can fit it in, on Monday, so that our week can have peace and that we're not up until midnight on Wednesday doing an assignment because we're doing things in our schedule that really we already knew was in our schedule, but we just didn't plan right. And so I think those types of things that just because they feel the difference in the panic of those kind of lifestyle situations. And so I believe like, especially if their ages, my kids are 14, 11, 10, and 8. And so especially for the younger ones, those types of things they can feel, or with or without peace and those types of things. So just making them aware of how good it feels to just not be crazy. And then we do talk, relationally about, as far as the way they treat each other. I think that brings in respect and other things, but that our home, like we are going to be the safest people for each other. Like this is not a home of competition and of being against each other. Like you 4 will have your backs like at all times. And so to champion them being champions for each other, I didn't grow up necessarily like that. And there was a lot of competition that my dad had kind of created with me and my sisters, which we had to fix that later on. So that was always a big priority with me being a mom, was I don't want there to be any competition, for them to compete for me or with each other. And so just again, creating a place where is it perfect? Heck to the no. Hello. We're all humans. I don't want to say like we run like this well-oiled machine over here or anything like that. But there's different things that they hear me say all the time. Like, hey, no, like that is not how we champion our teammates. Like, and that we're not even just teammates, we're life mates. And so those are just some things that, practically that I do as a mom to try to get them to see the importance of peace.
I cannot believe that you are at peace with all the things you just said. You made me tired with the baseball and reports and oh my God, like that, like I couldn't do that. I will someday when she's older.
I was about to say, yes.
That is a lot going on in your world.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah. And and that's the thing. I think that's what it kind of goes along with the quote that you just said, Robert, that it doesn't mean that it's, you sit around with my legs crossing and kumbaya all the time, right? Like that's not what peace means. It doesn't mean like easy, but it also means that you're doing, again, what's aligned. I think alignment is such this huge, like, mind, soul, heart thing. Like I have to work extra to provide peace to my schedule because there's so many different pieces that have to fit into it. Right. But when I do, it works well. And that's where I had to, like give you an illustration. So after school, my little 8-year-old still needs help with homework, right? And I love it because he's my last little dude. Everybody else can fend for themselves. And so I had scheduled meetings, or my calendar's open for agents to book. And I was realizing I was trying to do homework around my meetings. And it was causing a complete lack of peace, because then we're like shoving it in after dinner time, or we're trying to do it after baseball. And one simple shift to my schedule to block off an hour after the kids got home is all I needed to do to shift it to bring peace back to the household. So not every day. Like you can't book my schedule from 2:30 to 3:30 because that's homework time and that's my mom time. And then after 3:30, even though they're here and they're doing whatever, I still can have Zoom meetings. But it's things like that where you realize when things are getting disheveled and you're like, okay, is there something I can do to like fix, to help alleviate this? And that was something simple we had to do, because 4 kids and 100 different sports going in different directions, I'm like, we got to provide some kind of peace somewhere. So that was, a simple fix that was like a consistent issue that we're having. And so again, it's being mindful that peace is something that you want in your household, instead of just saying, oh, this is just how it has to be because I have 4 kids and I own a business and I do a podcast and they all have sports. And I'm like, no, I'm going to take ownership. There may be something I can do to tweak things and be able to add a little extra piece to an already full schedule.
So with all with your kids and the podcast and the insurance that you're doing, and that's the business you own. Now you're getting into, you run a book club, and you also just started life coaching. Did you not?
I did. Yes.
So you're trying to fill this plate of yours up pretty quickly, or maybe you have a really big plate. I don't know, but. So how would people listening to this podcast get in touch with you for insurance or for coaching or anything like that?
Perfect. I am on all social media platforms at I'm Jenn Gray. And then my website's imjenngray.com. That's where you can, book an appointment with me as far as kind of insurance questions or anything you've got going on. Podcast is Be Genuine with Jen. Wherever you listen to podcasts, it's on YouTube as well. If you want the live version of the podcast, but all audio is on, Apple and Spotify and all the things. But yeah, absolutely would love to connect and, would love to help you any way that I can, and would love for the podcast to add value to your life in any way possible as you seek to just live a genuine life.
So one last question for all our listeners out there who are probably looking to get a peace in their lives. What advice would you give them how to search for peace in their lives, or like, how would you start getting peace in your life?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think first comes with the acknowledgement that there's not peace. I think anytime there's any type of change that you're going to make, the way you're going to get there is, like we've said, is the ownership piece. So it's like the simple, silly illustration about homework after school. I had gotten my mind in a mode of looking for things that were not peaceful. And so it's desiring something and then being really, really, really honest with yourself about what's not providing peace. And something a counselor told me years ago that I thought was so huge is sometimes we try to heal from cancer with the tumor still inside. And so if there is something specific that's stealing the peace and the joy from your life, it's recognizing it's having the strength to confront it or combat it. Whether if it's a relationship, I'm not just telling everybody to run, right? This isn't like a fight or flight, like relationships that are supposed to be fixed can be fixed. But again, it's acknowledging that you want to live a life of peace. And then it's stripping away what doesn't belong. And then for me, it was taking time every single morning to get myself in the right space. And so workout for me is way more mental than it even is physical. I work out every single day of the week and it provides discipline but the most part, it provides like this mental strength of knowing I can do hard things. And I start my day every morning reminding myself I can do hard things. And sometimes creating peace actually means you have to relieve relationships or leave a job or change your schedule. And so getting yourself in this mindset that I can do hard things, filling your mind with books. I'm reading all the time. So I just finished a book called Worthy. That's amazing. I'm starting The Power of One More by Ed Milet. And, just always reading something. And again, that gets your mind in that space to even acknowledge maybe what does need to be changed. And then lastly, having that quiet time in the morning, whether that's through prayer, that's through meditation, or that's through just something where with a journal, I encourage that you can just take this really honest look at your life and to see what's not in alignment, because y'all, we are so busy. Everyone is so busy. And so if we're not looking to create peace, we won't. What we'll do is we'll get burnout, we'll get overwhelmed, we'll overextend ourselves when we really could have just stopped and said, okay, what can shift? And I think those things for me are great starting points of just, hey, where is there an area that I need peace? And I'm going to pause and then we're smarter than we give ourselves credit for. And, even that, I have plenty of coaches in my own life, right? I have people in business that I admire, that I'm learning from, that I'm asking questions. And so, don't do life alone either. Surround yourself with people that you can trust. And that alignment helps create peace, because then you're getting feedback on life situations that can give you in the right direction, versus people that are going to steer you in, something that isn't aligned with who you are. So I think relationships are another key, for creating peace.
Awesome. I agree with you with the quiet time. You work out, I do the meditation, the breath work, and that is cornerstone for peace, I guess you call it. That's okay. Where it starts.
Yeah.
So
we'll appreciate it. Thank you so much, Jen.
Absolutely.
If you would like to go deeper on this topic, reach out to us. We want to know and hear your powerful story. Chat or connect with us by booking your free session on our website, northmancoaching.com. And folks, that's a wrap on today's episode. And of course, thank you all for listening. We're so glad you could join us today. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, Living by Oak Values. And if you feel generous, leave us a review. It really helps and keeps these conversations going. For update and exclusive content, follow us on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, or visit our website, northmancoaching.com. We'll be back next week with another exciting episode that you don't want to miss. Until then, keep discussing your values, embracing the journey. Take care and stay authentic.